The bride was too short to reach his shoulders, but she outrode every cowboy in the valley. The rope they used was old, hemp, stiff with cold, and when they threw it over the branch of that cottonwood and looped it around my neck, it scratched the back of my ear the way a burlap sack does when you're carrying feed. Funny the things you notice. There were 8 of them, I counted. Not because I thought counting would help, but because my mind does that goes to numbers when there's nothing else to hold. 8 men, 2 torches, the cottonwood, and me on a horse they hadn't even had the decency to let me die on. It was Rafe Connolly's horse. I knew it by the white blaze. I'd sold Rafe that horse 3 years prior, and he'd never paid me full price for it. And that was the thought in my head when they slapped the flank and the animal lurched forward. I don't know what stopped it. I have tried over the years to put it in a straight line, what happened first, what happened second. But memory doesn't work that way. Not with things like that. What I have is pieces, the rope going taut. My neck not snapping clean because they'd miscalculated the knot or the drop or both, and instead I was just hanging, not dead, the rope pulling at my jaw, the cold coming up fast through my boots. Then sound. A horse. Then a different sound, which was a blade cutting through rope above my head, and then the ground. The ground was hard and frozen, and it knocked the breath out of me, and that was the first real thing. The first thing I was sure of, the cold pressed flat against my cheek, and the absence of air in my chest, and the desperate work of pulling any of it back in. She was off her horse before I had my eyes open. I didn't know her. That's the first thing I want to say, and I want to say it plain because people later made a story of it that wasn't true, that she'd ridden out for me specially, that she knew me, that it was arranged somehow. None of it. She was a stranger who'd seen 8 men ride north toward the cottonwood with a 9th man among them, hands tied, and she'd followed because she was that kind of woman. The kind that doesn't look for someone else to do a thing. Her name was Nora Birch. She was cutting the rope from my wrists when I got my eyes open. Small hands, fast with a knife. She had the rope off me and her hand under my jaw, checking my neck before I'd put together a full thought. "Can you ride?" she said. Not, "Are you all right?" Not, "What did they do to you? Can you ride?" which was the right question. I said yes, which wasn't entirely true, but it was true enough. She got me up, got me on her horse in front of her, and we went south at a pace that told me she knew the land well. Better than I did, and I'd been working it for 4 years. I found out later she'd been running cattle on the southern edge of the valley since her husband died, 2 years back. 300 head, one hand who was older than the hills and half deaf, and a daughter of 9 who could rope a calf at a dead gallop. The valley knew Nora Birch the way you know a thing without ever saying it out loud. She was competent. She paid her debts. She was left alone. Nobody had moved on her land because there was something in how she carried herself that said the cost would be too high. She brought me to her place, and it was dark by the time we got there, a low-slung house, good solid door, lamplight in one window. She didn't explain me to her daughter, just said, "This man needs doctoring, go heat water." The girl did it without blinking. What I remember about that first night is the lamp on the table. The way it threw light up under Nora's face while she worked on my neck. The rope had taken skin with it in 2 or 3 places, and the side of my jaw had gone a color I couldn't see but could feel by the tenderness. She had steady hands. A healer's hands, or just a rancher's, there's not always a difference. She didn't talk much while she worked, and neither did I, and the quiet between us wasn't the awkward kind. It was the kind that happens when 2 people are both practical about something that needs doing. She gave me a cot in the room off the kitchen. I slept 12 hours. When I woke, there was bread on the table, and the girl, her name was Me, was watching me with open curiosity from across the room. "You died," she said. "Not quite. Mama cut you down." "She did." Me considered this. "She cuts things down all the time," she said, in a tone that suggested this was a reliable quality. "She cut a mountain lion off a calf last spring." I didn't say anything to that because there wasn't much to say. Nora Birch, it was becoming clear, was a woman who acted. I stayed 3 days. That's what she'd said, stay until you can ride right. Not until you're comfortable, not as long as you like, until you can ride. The terms were clear and I understood them. On the 2nd day, I mended fence. Not because she asked me to, but because I could see it needed doing and I wasn't a man who sat. She came out around mid-morning and watched me work for a moment without saying anything. "You do good work," she said. "It's fence." Fence is fence. Some men string wire like they're angry at it. You don't. She went back inside. I thought about that for a long time. Here is something I should tell you, because it matters to what came after. The men who hanged me were not strangers. Rafe Connolly was among them, yes, but so were two of the alderman brothers, who ran the biggest spread in the valley, and Jim Pike, who was the closest thing we had to a circuit judge. They had accused me of rustling. The accusation was false, I knew it, they knew it, and the cattle I'd supposedly taken were cattle I'd bought fair from a man named Cruz who'd since left the territory and couldn't say so himself. It wasn't about the cattle. It was about my quarter section of bottomland that sat between the alderman's north pasture and the river, land they'd been trying to buy from me for 2 years at a price that was insult dressed up as an offer. I knew this, the town knew it, but knowing and saying and doing are 3 different things, and I was one man and the aldermans were the aldermans. What I had not known, until I came back from nearly dead, was that Nora Birch's land bordered mine to the south. I worked that out on the second afternoon, going over the fence line in my head. Her southern range, my bottomland, the river. We were neighbors and had never met. I told her when she brought coffee out to where I was working. She knew already. I bought from Cruz the same day you did, she said, different parcel. He was selling everything before he left. Did the aldermans approach you? She gave me a look that was, I believe, the closest thing to amusement she showed in those first few days. They sent someone. I told him to tell them no. Just know, she handed me the coffee. They didn't push it. I believed that. Looking at her, I believed it entirely. On the 3rd day, I told her I'd be leaving in the morning, and she nodded and said she'd pack food for the ride. We were standing by the corral, her daughter nearby, the old hand. His name was Dix, coming in from the far pasture on a roan that had seen better years. The aldermans will come after your land again, I said, once I'm gone. I imagine so. You could sell. Go somewhere easier. She looked at me the way a woman looks at a man when he said something she's already decided not to dignify with an argument. This is my land, she said. Not hard, not heated. Just a statement of a fact that had no negotiating room in it. I nodded, drank the last of my coffee, set the cup on the fence post. I'll stay another week, I said. She didn't look surprised. Maybe she wasn't. There's fence along the east ridge, she said. I'll find it. That was how it started, not romantic, not dramatic, not anything you'd put in a song. A man staying to mend fence and 2 people who understood the same things without needing to explain them. What followed was not quick. I want to be honest about that. Nora Birch was not a woman who moved fast in any direction that mattered. She was deliberate. She watched. She made judgments slowly and held them firmly, and she showed you who she was in small things over time rather than in one big declaration. I came to understand that the way she handed you a cup of coffee, without fuss, no production, just here, you need this, was a kind of language she spoke. The way she said your name when she was telling you something direct versus when she was just talking across a room. The way she listened. Not many people know how to listen. She did. I fixed her east ridge fence. Then I rebuilt a section of her stock pen that was rotted through at the base. Then I helped Dix run her cattle to the lower pasture when the first real cold came. Each thing led to the next, and I stopped counting days. The aldermans came in December. It was a Sunday, which told you something about them. Men who come to threaten you on a Sunday have thought about the symbolism of it. 4 of them, Cobb aldermen in front, the other 3 behind. They rode into her yard, and I came out of the barn. They hadn't expected me. Cobb pulled up his horse. Birch around, he said. She is. We'll speak to her. You can speak to me, I said. He looked me over the way men like him look at men like me, measuring, calculating, deciding. You're that Halloran, the rustler. I'm Halloran, I said. The rustling was a lie and you know it, so do the men who rode with you. Silence. Cobb's horse shifted under him. Nora came out of the house then. She stood in the doorway and didn't say a word, just watched, and her being there, quiet and straight, changed the weight of things somehow. Like ballast. Like she was the thing that made the whole situation stable. We're making a revised offer on the Birch property, Cobb said, still looking at me, not her. A good offer. The answer's the same as last time, I said. I'm speaking to Mrs. Birch. Then speak to her. He looked at her. She had her arms crossed, her expression easy. No, she said. Simple, final, she had a gift for that. Cobb sat there a moment longer than he needed to, which is what men do when they're deciding whether to push. He decided not to. They rode out. Nora went back inside. I went back to the barn. That evening she brought me dinner in the barn, which she'd never done before. Set it on the bench beside me, sat down on a hay bale, and didn't say anything for a while. Then, they'll come back with more men. Probably. And you'll still be here. I looked at her. She was looking at her hands, which were working a piece of baling wire without any particular purpose, just moving because she needed something to do with them. Yes, I said. She nodded, set the wire down, looked up. All right. That was the closest thing we had to a conversation about it, but it was enough. It was exactly enough. I should tell you about the horses, because the horses are part of it. There's a thing that happens in a valley when word gets around, and word had gotten around. Not just about the aldermans coming and leaving empty-handed, but about Nora Birch generally, her horses specifically. She had 7 horses, and 5 of them she'd broke herself, and there was not a man in the valley, including the alderman's best hands, who could match her over rough terrain. People knew it. They'd watched her run cattle, watched her on that roan she favored in bad weather. It wasn't show, she didn't make a show of anything, but it was undeniable. The horse she'd cut me down on, the gray with the Roman nose, that animal had a connection with her that you didn't see every day. She communicated with him in adjustments too small to see. Come February, when the snow broke enough to ride, there was a gather at the McCready place, the kind of informal thing where ranchers worked cattle together for a few days. Nora went. I went. We rode separately, arrived separately, and within an hour there wasn't a soul there who didn't understand what the situation was, because a man knows when he's being watched and understood, and a woman knows when a man is hers in the ways that matter. You can't hide that. You shouldn't try. Wade McCready, who I got along with and who was not in the alderman's pocket, came up to me on the second day while we were sorting cattle. She's something, he said. She is. You know, she turned down Cobb's brother when he came courting 2 years back. Cobb's brother is worth more than most men in this valley combined. I know it, I said. He nodded, watching her work. She was on the gray, doing something precise at the edge of the herd, her and that horse a single thing. Turned down a few others, too. Never looked twice. I didn't say anything to that. She looks at you, Wade said. Wade, I said. Just saying. He went back to his cattle. I stood there a moment and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, which was the warmth of being known. Not performed at, not used for something. Known. We were riding home that third day, Nora and me and I, and there was a passage through a narrow cut in the ridge where you had to go single file. Nora led, me in the middle, me behind. The cut opened out onto the south slope of our land, her land and mine sharing that same long view, and she stopped the gray there without any particular reason. Just stopped, looked out. Me moved up beside her. They were the same in certain ways, the stillness, the directness of the gaze. Me had her mother's jaw. I came up on the other side of Nora, and we sat there 3 abreast in the cold. Below us the valley lay in late afternoon light, pale gold on white snow, the river a dark thread, the timber standing black against it. A long way. A life's worth of land to tend and fight for. My father's land was in Illinois, she said, flat as a table, beautiful in its way, but I never wanted to go back to it. She was quiet a moment. This is what land should look like. Built to defend itself. I thought about the bottomland below, my quarter section down there, and her south range meeting it, and what that meant, 2 pieces of something larger, the river between us and the aldermans like a line neither of them could easily cross if we held it together. I didn't say any of this, but she knew it. We'd been saying things without saying them for months. Me said, "Are you going to marry him?" Just like that, because she was 9, and 9-year-olds see things plainly. Nora looked at her daughter, then at me. Her face in the afternoon light, the cold in her cheeks, the same direct gaze she did cutting that rope off my wrists in the frozen dark. "I'm thinking on it," she said. Me considered this. "He mended the East Ridge fence," she said, as though this was a meaningful point in his favor. "He did," Nora said. They looked at me. "I can mend it again in spring," I said, "if it needs it." Nora's mouth did a thing it rarely did, which was the beginning of a smile. Not wide, not performed, just there. "It'll need it," she said. We rode on down the slope in the last of the light. the three of us, toward the house where the lamp was already burning. Dix had lit it before we left that morning, habit of years, and the smoke coming straight up from the chimney in the still air. I don't need to tell you what happened after. The aldermans came again in March with lawyers instead of writers, which told you the fight had changed to one they thought they could win on paper. They were wrong. Nora had a deed as clean and clear as any in the county, and mine was the same, and the two of us standing together on ground we both knew was enough to make clear to any man watching that this was not a thing that would be moved. There were other troubles. There are always other troubles. A man doesn't tell a story like this because the troubles end. They don't. There's always weather and disease and bad years and the grinding of other men's ambitions against your own. You do the work and you hold what's yours. But what I want to tell you, what matters. It's a morning in April. The snow's gone except on the highest ground. Nora is in the pen with the gray, working him on a line, and I'm watching from the fence rail with coffee going cold in my hand. Me is somewhere in the barn. Dix is way off on the ridge, a small shape against the sky. Nora brings the horse around and sees me watching, and she doesn't do anything except look back for just a moment. That look. The one that says, you specifically, not some idea of a man, not what you can give or do or provide, but you, the man they left hanging from a cottonwood because they thought he didn't matter, the man she cut down in the dark. She turns back to the horse. The gray moves forward on the line. Everything continues. I drink the cold coffee. It's the best I've ever had. There are things I don't have words for, and that look is one of them. I've turned it over in my mind for more years than I can count now, the quiet of it, the weight of it. You spend a life waiting to be seen right, and when it finally happens, it doesn't come with ceremony. It comes at the fence rail in the cold morning with cold coffee in your hand, and a small woman working a horse in the pen below you, and a look across 20 feet of yard that says everything a man could ever need to hear. I am the luckiest man I know. That's the whole of it.